Hello, welcome back to the garden. Today I'm in the greenhouse. We're almost at the very end of February, the beginning of March, which for me, spring's not far away. This is probably the busiest time of year that I have because that is when I start thinking about starting all my vegetable seeds off, but then looking after them before they then go into the ground and hopefully don't get eaten by any pests or diseases and thrive and grow really well. So a very, very busy time of the year for me. I've been away from the garden for a week, which has been really nice to kind of go away, recharge my batteries, ready to hit the ground running. But I still got a lot of stuff that I need to get done before I can really kind of start mass seed sowing, especially with tidying up the greenhouse. This morning, I've just popped in here to move those potatoes out. The potatoes that were chitting in here need to go down into the house so they can continue chitting because it's going to be a good few weeks before they go in the ground. The peas that I sowed about 3 weeks ago now have germinated nicely in the kitchen, but they need more light, so they've come up today. I've not actually had a great germination with those actually, so I'm quite surprised. So whether it was the soil or the temperature that's been involved with not letting those germinate as well, I'm not sure, but I'm not going to worry too much. All I'm going to do is when I actually plant them in the ground, they will get planted with another seed alongside them, which means I'll get a prolonged harvest, but also it will pad them out a little bit as well. I've got my onion sets down here that I need to start thinking about because they're sets rather than grown from seed. They will flower this year, which means if they get too stressed, they will bolt and they will produce a flower stalk before they've grown enough. And that means that I'm going to get a small onion and one that won't last. So over the next couple of weeks, I need to get their growing bed sorted. And that will be another thing out of the greenhouse that doesn't need to be in here for warmth and will just get in the way really. The reason I've brought you along to the greenhouse today, you'll already know from the title of the video, but that is to sow my tomato seeds for the year. I'm going to be sowing them outside in the greenhouse, but then taking them back inside so they can germinate because it's still very, very cold in here. Tomatoes for me are probably not one of my most favourite crops to grow, and I think I did say last year that I wasn't really going to grow many of them this year, but I think I've actually changed my mind. One of which is probably the media scaremongering while I was away, but I grow my tomatoes in halos. I was really lucky that someone gifted me a load of these a couple of years ago, and I've got 29 of these, and I have started using them for cucumbers, so I will definitely hold some back for cucumbers, but that will mean that I've got probably space with these to grow about 20. When I grew tomatoes last year, I knew I was giving up my allotment and I knew that I was only going to be growing them here, which also made me think about how many I'd be growing because the greenhouse here and my polytunnel do get more shade than a tomato really likes. But since then, I've started working on my forest garden, and my forest garden gets full sun, and it is going to be an amazing place to grow tomatoes if I have a polytunnel up there. I've not bought a polytunnel at the moment, and I'm not going to invest in a really expensive one. I am hoping possibly this year to buy another polytunnel like the one I've already got. And if I can get that organised with a friend, then I definitely will have room to grow loads of tomatoes. I mentioned a moment ago that I grow my tomatoes in halos, and it suddenly occurred to me now that you might not know what a tomato halo is. So rather than bore you now with what one of those is, if you don't know and you're interested, I've actually made 2 videos about using halos. So I'll put them above in the cards now. The first one and then the second one, but I'll also put both those videos down below in the description so you can have a look at those if you're interested. You can probably make your own homemade ones, but I absolutely love using these, and you can use it on other things other than tomatoes because cucumbers did really well in these last year. Before I came out into the garden today, I went through my seed box and got all of my tomatoes out. I'm not super organised in kind of date order, or when you need to grow things like some people are. All I do is just put all the tomatoes together, all the cabbages together, beans and so on like that. So I grabbed all of them out, and as you can see, I've got far too many and I'm never going to sow all of these. I've picked up random tomato varieties from seed swaps and got them free in magazines and things like that. So I quickly went through them then and chose the ones that I'm going to be sowing today and the ones that I can probably put aside for seed swaps in the future, or back in the box to kind of wait for another day to see if I want to grow those. So it means that I don't have to bore you going through every single one. I can just talk to you about the ones that I'm going to be sowing today. So I'm not going to go on for ages because it might get really boring. So I will quickly run through them with you. When it comes to different varieties of tomatoes to grow, I try and keep it pretty simple and only grow maybe 5 or 6 different varieties rather than kind of 20 or 30. I know there are some of you out there that grow amazing varieties of tomatoes and your photos look great. But generally for me, I try and keep it simple, and I do grow more cherry tomatoes than I do grow the bigger varieties of tomatoes. And really that is just because I find they're much more tastier. The smaller the tomato, the juicier and kind of more flavoursome it is, but also I can pack more in and they grow a little bit taller and spindly, I find, and then I can have lots of, you know, more plants in that area. So the first variety of the cherry ones that I'm going to be growing this year are Yellow Delight. Yellow Delight is a type or a variety that I've grown probably about 6 years in a row now, and I've also got a pack of saved seed from either this pack or another pack that I've had. So this year I'm going to be sowing both the ones from the commercial growers and the ones I've saved as well. These are from 2019 though, so I might get a slightly poorer germination. We'll see, but if I can grow both of those, it'd be really interesting to see the saved compared to the commercial ones, whether the saved are going to come true, even though, if you don't know, a tomato pretty much is self-fertile and it's self-pollinating, which means that they don't cross with other varieties of tomatoes very easily. So usually if you like a tomato that you've eaten, if you save the seeds from those, it will come true, but it'd be interesting to see how they do. So that's the yellow plum. Then aside from the yellow plum, we've also got a red pear, which is a red version really of Yellow Delight. I can't remember too much about the flavour on these ones, but I've grown them before. Then that moves us over to this variety. This variety is also a plum tomato, but it's a bush one. And I think when I had a look at this before, it does grow okay outside. So I was hoping to have a couple of pots of these on the patio, which is an amazing sun trap. So if I can get these to grow really nicely this year, I'll be pretty pleased. But I can't give you much more details about these because I've actually never grown those before. And then it takes us to the last of the cherry tomatoes that I'm going to be growing this year, which, to be honest, I don't think I can pronounce it very well. Oh, Principe Borghese, that is pronounced completely wrong. Borghese, not sure. I'll put the name of that tomato up on the screen for you to have a look at, and if you know how to pronounce it, let me know. Again, I don't know too much about this one, but it's a cherry and I've got the seeds, so I'm going to be sowing those today as well. And that takes us on to the larger varieties of tomatoes that I'm growing this year. The first one is Gardener's Delight and the second one is Moneymaker. Both varieties are firm favourites to grow in the UK and they're generally pretty well suited to our climate. Both can be grown outside, but I will be growing them inside and you probably would get much better results by growing them indoors. Before we turn the camera around now and start sowing all of these seeds, I thought I'd just quickly talk you through how I'm going to be sowing and growing these tomato seedlings this year. So the first thing is, rather than using single cell trays or, you know, a modular system to be growing all of my tomato seedlings in, what I'm going to do is multi-sow them in a fruit punnet. I find it a really good way to get tomato seedlings started off, and then once they're a little bit bigger you can prick them out and put them into their individual pots. And that is why it's so important not to sow about 50 seeds in each one of these, because what will happen is you won't want to throw half of them away, so you'll end up with about 200 tomato plants on every single windowsill in your house. They won't be ready to go out into the greenhouse or the garden until, you know, really early May, probably a little bit later, and then your house will get completely overrun with all these massive tomatoes. So I find these are a great thing that you can use, but really you just need to sparingly put your seeds in. And then the growing medium I'm going to be using is half homemade compost, first time ever, and half peat-free compost. The reason I'm actually using some homemade compost this year is because when I've used peat-free in the past, I really get kind of mixed responses to the seed germination and stuff like that. And I thought if I half and half, obviously I've saved a little bit of money there, but then I can make sure that that seedling does have kind of the best start to be able to like put its roots down into and things. And you don't really need to worry with seeds when you're growing them that they have loads of nutrients, because you don't actually need to feed a seedling till about 8 weeks old anyway. Which means by the time you've probably pricked it out and moved it onto its own pot, then you really need to worry about the nutrients in the soil. So I thought, let's try something a bit different. It's something that I haven't done before. So yeah, there you go. That is how I'm going to be sowing them this year. And I have mentioned, obviously, once we sow them out here today, it is far too cold, unless you're using a heated greenhouse, heated propagators, to actually start your tomatoes off in the UK outside. So once we get these all done today, we're going to be taking them in. They can germinate, and then we can, you know, see how we get on. So now the seeds have been sown into these fruit punnets, I'm just going to transfer them over to one of these seed trays, which fit so easily on a windowsill. I've not watered them yet either. I'm going to wait until I've taken them in, and I will probably use some slightly warm or tepid water to water them. Also, I've not actually labelled them yet, so I've left the seed packets inside each of the trays so I know which ones are which, and then once they're inside I can make some labels for them and then take the seed packets back out. I don't know if you noticed when I was actually sowing these, even though I'd said a minute before, make sure you only put a few seeds in each one. I didn't. There's probably, I don't know, about 30 to 50 seeds in each tray. So I will also end up with 200 tomato plants on each windowsill, even though I've just told you not to do that. Maybe I'll just have to get really good at getting rid of half of them or giving them away or something. So there you go. Do let me know what varieties of tomatoes you're growing, even though I said, you know, I'm definitely not going to grow any more. If there is a variety that you think will be really, really good, or you can suggest, please let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, there you go. That is me sowing my tomato plants for this growing season. And I really hope they grow well, and I can't wait to show you what they look like in a couple of weeks. If this is the first time you're watching one of my videos, I really hope you've enjoyed it. Please do hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to be notified of all of my latest videos. As ever, YouTube have some videos up now on the screen that they think you'll like, so please go ahead and watch those, and I'll catch up with you in the next episode. Bye!